basement. And it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down straight and then watch the hair basement come back up again. Basement, they look at it. So I learned about roaches. Basement. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. Basement. I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Come on, man.
I've loved kids jumping on my lap. I've loved kids jumping on my lap. And Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Basement. the men, they're now all men, the guys I work with down here, and they're all guys at the time. They're all good men. Most of them made an awful lot of themselves. And Earl Larkin had a rough time. And some of you knew Earl. I came back as a public defender. I came back to Delaware and I got a fancy job with the oldest law firm in the state. But the city was burning. It was burning down here. And I couldn't do it. So I quit and became a public defender. And the first trial I had, I walked into court as a public defender with another guy named Eddie Sobosinski, a defender. I'd only been admitted to the bar 1 week. And Earl Larkin was in chains around his ankles and on his wrist, and they were chained together, so on a belt. And he said, "Who's going to try the Larkin case?" I just got started. And he was aptly named. His name was Judge Stiftel. And he said, Sobosinski said, "Well, that's my colleague. He just joined the public defender's office." He said, will you in fact defend him? So he turned to Larkin and said, "He'll defend you." I said, whoa, Your Honor. I know nothing about the case. He said, "I'll give you till tomorrow, but you draw the jury today." And he looked at Larkin and he said, "You mind if he represents you?" And I'll never forget what he said. I learned a lot. He said, and I mean it sincerely. He looked at me and he said, "One hunky's just as bad as any other. I'll take whoever you send me." And here's what I want to tell you about Earl. Here's what I want to tell you about the neighborhood and the heart. I defended him. He got beat up right on the other side of the field here. He walked along the tracks. He was a sailor in a sailor's uniform, the guy who he beat up and robbed. And so I thought he was innocent. I kept the jury out 5 hours, but they convicted him. And I felt so bad. So I go down to the old prison all the time. They had little wooden tables and two little chairs in a big dome you'd sit under where you'd be interviewed. And I was sitting there, Councilwoman, and the third time saying, "I'm appealing this case." And finally he took the table, he flipped it up, and he said, jumped up, and the guards came and grabbed him. He said, "Don't you understand, Joe? I did it. I did it." But here's the point. He cared about me. This is a man who saw me bleeding because I saw this guy going to jail and I thought he was innocent. There's character, even in great problems. There's so much character in this neighborhood. There was so much character back then, too. So many people didn't get a shot. So many people didn't get a shot who could be standing right where Lisa's standing today, a lot earlier, could be standing where I'm standing today. Let me end by saying, I was a pretty darn good lifeguard. Yeah, man. I taught swimming, too. And I remember going over, we used to play the other pools, and we played basketball at lunchtime, remember? We went over to Riverside, we played, and someone on the other team threw the ball to me by accident. And they looked at me and said, "Oh, God, I thought you were on my team." I'm thinking, I'm the only white boy within 20 miles. Remember, I'd get invited down to Baby Grand. I walk in and say, "Who's this guy?" And they say, "He's ours. He's ours." You've always had my back. The neighborhood's always had my back. And God willing, I've always had your back. And I'll always have it as long as I'm around. I love you. It's a great honor. Thank you very much. And if I were still a lifeguard, I'd say, time to get in the pool. Thanks, everybody. And Councilwoman, thank you so, so much for this honor. Thank you. So how you guys doing? Who here is going to be president someday? Raise your hand. All right. I'll tell you one more story on the way out. You know what? There was a guy, when I first started, black folks weren't even allowed to vote very much, very easily. That's how long ago it was. And guess what I got to do? 8 years ago, I got to be in the Wilmington train station, looking over the 3rd Street Bridge that had been burned to the ground, most of it, thinking nothing was ever going to get any better 40 years ago, waiting for a black man to pick me up, to take me 124 miles to be sworn in as President and Vice President of the United States. That's progress. We can make more. God love you all. Put your hand.